It's so good to see this wonderful group tonight. I'm Roberta Pangiwani, Assistant Director here at the library, and we are very, very privileged tonight to have our panel. I'm going to introduce our, well, first of all, I want to welcome our David Tordinen. He is the Vice President at Ramapo College. He's with us tonight. And just a quick note, Dr. Jacob Lebenz, he is the Director of the Holocaust, Center for Holocaust Studies at Ramapo College. And Jacob touched base with us a couple months ago, and he was telling us about a program he was holding on campus earlier in the day, which happened this morning. And he said we would love to have an opportunity to share the panel and the stories tonight with the community, and again, just a wonderful neutral space. So we were so thrilled that it all worked out, and I think we're going to be doing a lot of good things in the future. So Jacob is going to tell us all about our speakers tonight, Tyler. And Scott, we are thrilled to have you here tonight, and there's nothing better than a personal story. It's what we remember and what we're moved by, so we are so thankful for your willingness to share your stories tonight. We will have time to have a discussion and take questions after the program or even during, and we just look forward to a wonderful conversation. So welcome all, and Jacob, take it away.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Roberta, and thank you all for coming. It's really a delight to be here. I'm going to let Tyler and Scott introduce themselves. I think that's a better way to do things in general, and certainly when it involves the stories that I want them to tell themselves, right? I'll be here to ask some questions and, bring some either context or some additional information, but really I want this to feel as informal as possible. This is just a conversation. First, we're going to start out and have a bit of a conversation, and then there'll be time for you to ask questions. I will say though that we're going to be talking about things that not everybody knows about in detail, and that's probably a good thing. But if you have any questions, raise your hand. Like the discursive questions, I'd like to hold till later, but if we bring up a group, a name, an idea that you don't know, it's important that you let us know so we can define it. And we had such a wonderful discussion at Ramapo College earlier today. The students stuck around for 2-3 hours. They would have stayed longer if we let them, but we needed coffee and food. So thank you. What we're going to do now is I'll have you introduce yourselves and how basically just start us off with a little bit about yourselves, the movement, and I think it would be helpful if we were to define for the group what we mean by white nationalism.
Hello, everybody. Does that come through? Right.
Yes.
Let me first say I am not much of a public speaker. I'm getting better. But if there's any points where I seem like I have a little bit of stage fright or lose track of where I'm at, that's why. My name is Scott Ernest. I was a white nationalist, and what white nationalism is it's basically kind of the intersection between white racial nationalism and the nation state. So, if you ever hear of things like an ethno-state or anything like that, in particular with white nationalism, it's kind of like that. So, it's the idea of European nations being white or the United States being a white nation despite being a melting pot. That's kind of what it's going for. And I was a member of Pioneer Little Europe Kalispell, which was basically a movement trying to get an ethno-state in northwest Montana. I was also a Stormfront moderator of the pretty much infamous website. And I was also a member of several other groups. I got involved, through, I guess, a good sense of ideals, but that ended up going awry. My entrance into the white nationalist movement was because it was 2004, so the internet was still kind of newish. And I ran across a blog where somebody was trying to send people to, basically sexually assault two 12-year-old girls, Lynx and Lamb Gady, who were the daughters of April Gady. They were the band Prussian Blue. And I objected to that, contacted the federal government, the FBI in particular, and they kind of shrugged it off, said thank you, and said, hey, why don't you let the mom know? Well, contacted April, and from there, had a friendship with her, became somebody that was very close in their lives. I ended up being an admin on the girls' blog. I helped moderate their forum before I ever joined Stormfront. And from there, I just kind of fell down that rabbit hole. I did it kind of late in life. I was 26 at the time, and that wasn't kind of my politics prior to that point. And so, at some point, I'm sure we'll talk about my exit from the movement. I'm not going to go into that right now since it's an introduction and I am already rambling. But I will say that I currently run, or at least I co-founded a nonprofit called Hands of Air Inc., which is a lot like Life After Hate or Christian Vigilani's Free Radicals Project, which I helped out with actually too. But my focus has been on former white nationalists who are LGBTQ. And so that's kind of where I currently stand at this moment.
Hello. So my name is Tyler Parker DiPeppe. I'm a trans man, so I was born female and now I'm male. My introduction into the movement was different than Scott's. I fell down the accelerationist rabbit hole, which is like the new wave of fascism now. It seems to be that's the only direction that's even going at this point. So I originally was a skinhead when I joined, and that was after high school, and I started transitioning during high school at 16 years old, which, funny enough, my dad was fine with, despite being pretty far right. So just to like give you the basis of that, my mom and dad were pretty far right growing up, so I was kind of raised in that political atmosphere. So when I joined the skinhead movement, it was like a brief period, probably only a few months honestly, before I said this is not going anywhere. And I eventually got recruited on Instagram by Adam Waffen Division, which if anybody doesn't know, Adam Waffen Division is a pretty bad group. Murdered quite a few of their own people, was involved with, back in 2017, almost bombing all of Tampa, Florida. Luckily, well, unluckily at the same time, the leader of the group, his roommates, murdered each other. One guy was left standing, and when the police came to the scene, they found all the bomb-making material, all the explosives, and they arrested the leader and arrested the guy for the murders. So I heard about that in 2017 and was like, by this point, already 2019, still in the skinhead movement. And I was like, well, we're not really doing anything, at least they're doing something in my mindset. And when they recruited me, I jumped on it because lo and behold, they had a 14-year-old in charge of the Florida cell. And they didn't know he was 14 at the time. And they were like, he is messing things up for us. You could lead, you know what you're doing, because they were paying attention to how open I was about everything I was doing. And so that was my leeway into joining. They didn't know I was trans until much later. I kept that part of my life pretty private. So yeah, I think that's good for an introduction, right?
Thank you for offering such a warm welcome. what I didn't say, and I should say, is how I know Scott and Tyler. And Tyler, I met today. We spoke, once or twice to set this up. So I know his story from movies and podcasts that he sent me. But I've known Scott virtually for 8 years. Around 2016, 15, 16, 17, I started witnessing, like a lot of us, the rise of what became the alt-right. And because I was a graduate student, I was a graduate student, but then really, after I had graduated, I spent a lot of time and started researching the movement. I studied Jewish history, and I write about anti-Semitism. And one of my key guides, when I got onto these spaces, mostly Twitter, was Scott, who was doing de-radicalization work, doing, trying to bring information to light, trying to help people who are fighting white nationalism, trying to help people out of white nationalism. So I'm grateful to Scott because he was helpful and informative in helping me come up with my own ideas. And now that he's come out here to share it with you, we've been all the more grateful. As they discussed, Scott is helping Tyler now, right? Tyler is Scott's client. And so this is even more exciting for me in the sense that I get to see, first getting to meet Tyler, who seemed, I've met him for a couple minutes, but we seem to have hit it off, and seeing Scott's work and seeing the benefit of Scott's work has been really moving and important. So we began with how you got into these movements. I think what would be interesting, right, because we're looking at two men who are almost a generation apart, right? Scott's about my age, we're in our mid to late 40s, Tyler's 25. And so the experiences are very different, and the movements that they joined were very different. So I think the first thing to ask is, I know Scott, you mentioned it a little bit, but if we could talk about what brought you into these movements, right? Because that's one of the questions that we ask. One of the questions that I had, I first started thinking about, when I got online and started seeing these movements, I wanted to understand what they believed. What did they believe? What did they think? And honestly, it wasn't tremendously different in a lot of ways than much of the older anti-Semitism that I had learned about. It was updated for the time, and the methods moved differently. So I started to think about what one of my mentors talks about, and she says, we always focus on the supply side. What is anti-Semitism? What is racism? Very infrequently do we focus on the demand side. What is anti-Semitism for my work, but more broadly, racism, white nationalism, what is it doing for the white nationalist? Because it's not a zero-cost endeavor. In fact, it has a very high personal, professional cost. So I'm interested in what drew you into these movements.
Well, a big part of it is you kind of get a community, It wasn't a community that I was originally intending to be a part of. And I use the word community loosely because everybody in white nationalism hates everybody else in white nationalism. Infighting is constant. I did it when I was in the movement. I was a pit bull on storefront and caused a few flare-ups. You do meet people in the movement that are otherwise enjoyable to be around, and you start building this weird dysfunctional community, and that's something that a lot of white nationalists needed. PLE, for example, Pioneer Little Europe Kalispell. A big part of the reason it existed was bringing families into northwest Montana. Now, ostensibly, what the PLE was meant for was you create a target area and you start bringing in people of a certain politics. And if it's a small enough town, you can then change the politics of the town. So if you ever hear the term PLE, which isn't really used that much anymore, it's kind of going the wayside in this day where you see what's going on. At the time, that was the way they wanted to try to change politics. And And so we started bringing people in. Before I got there, it was a little bit chaotic. April Gady was the one that started the PLE, and she would ally with a lot of people that I certainly wouldn't have. But once I got there, you know, one thing I've always been kind of good at, I mean, not only do I have a weird charm for, I'm eccentric, I look like a homeless mountain man, but I somehow know how to work the system, I guess. So she kind of gave me the role of recruiter, and so I would vet people, because I didn't want insane people that were going to kill everybody coming to the area. So I would ask them questions, find out, what kind of people they were. Our goal was to try to get families to come there, and we did have a lot of families that would come there. People that, if you saw them on the streets, you would not know that they were they were National Socialists, but they looked normal. And they said the most vile things, but you would not be able to pick them out of a lineup. And it wasn't like the old skinheads or anything like that, or hoods or anything like that. That was kind of our goal, to build this community, something that people could be around, people that were of like mind. Again, everybody hated everybody also, so there was, even in the PLC, there was a little bit of chaos. And that was kind of what a lot of people were just wanting. They were wanting somewhere where they could belong. Kind of answered the question.
We'll say, everybody in Adam often hated each other all the time. My bad. But the main thing that attracted people in Adam often was mainly the loneliness aspect of their lives, or all the negativity in their lives, things not going well. The group was not very cohesive as they like to portray themselves to be. Different religious arguments all the time, different ethnic arguments all the time. We had one guy that was considered to be kicked out for being Polish, funny enough. And they were like, well, he's useful, so we should keep him in. And I was like, is he not white? You guys are gonna kick him out? The leeway into joining the group, for me at least, it's mainly just home life at the start, and then there was this need to make my dad feel proud of me for being a man, because he's always like, oh, you need to man up, you need to be a man, you want to be a man so bad, you want to transition, then you need to man the hell up. And I was like, okay, well, I guess I'm not a man enough, so I'll just do all these manly things that he's saying. And so I'll join a militia, or I'll join a skid group, and I'll go fight, because that's kind of what he was hoping for, I suppose. It's caused me a lot of turmoil, for sure. I'm still kind of recovering from that right now, and learning how to be happy with my own life as it is. And to the extent, like, him and I are not really on speaking terms at this point. But I feel like when people join these groups, it's mostly due to home life or lack of friends, because I definitely, after high school, stopped having as many friends, and I wasn't really going anywhere with my life. I dropped out of college once, and I didn't know what I was doing, packed everything, moved away from New Jersey to Florida, which was a bad choice, but got stuck there for 5 years. And I just pretty much worked and then found myself isolated on these online corners talking to people that were like-minded as me. And yeah, it was rough. I don't know what else to touch on from there, but.
Yeah.
So first, guys, thank you for doing this. Thank you for being here and talk about courageous, right? Coming from where you came to tell us about it. I mean, I'm just, I'm off on that side. Is time or did I?
Time, yeah.
So fascinating. So you felt like you were attracted because of the need to belong, it sounds like. And maybe the same for yourself, that there had to be something missing or something that attracted you. What I'm curious about is that dynamic with your dad. So where do you think the hate or where did that start? Because if you think about generation to generation passing along that, have you thought back to what was the catalyst there? Because obviously that impacted you a lot.
Before you answer, we're recording, so I'm going to reiterate the question. Thank you. So the question was, right, he appreciated that there was a need for community, a certain loneliness, but what was the origin of the hate? Because it's not immediately obvious why hate is an answer to loneliness. And I think a lot of us, hate seems like the opposite of an answer to loneliness. And I think he also referenced the fact that your parents were far right, and so where's the origins of this, and how does, this is a fantastic question that I wish I would have asked in front of my students, right? How does loneliness lead to joining a group founded on hate?
So, good question. So with that, it's the communities that you find are very strange regarding, like, for me, for example, for the accelerationist group, it really prides on, like, it's not the same for you, but I'm just speaking for me. It's a lot of showing off in a way, because I don't know if you've ever seen Adam Waffen and their nice little tirades of posing in front of the camera with their flags. That's a thing that they did, or posters on houses. Yeah, stuff like that, trying to recruit people. But they look at you and they go, okay, you think the same as me. So automatically that means we should be friends and we should get along and we should start this movement together and pursue this together, like right off the bat with that. But funnily enough, like with Scott's group, they used to actually do things together that were of value, I would say. Like, so if I wanted to talk about, like, hey, let's go play tennis, guys, they would look at me and laugh in my face and be like, you are gay for wanting to play tennis. You really want us to play tennis with you? And I'm like, oh, okay, I guess I won't talk about that. Or I mentioned, like, another hobby, like, I'm just talking about video games, and you would think, like, all right, guys love video games. I'd be like, oh, I can't wait for Elder Scrolls 6. And they would be like, you are a dork. So it's like, for my group, it was, if we're not being racist, or abhorrent, or shooting guns, or training at the hate camp, then there is no actual community there. It's just like a false image. And I mean, most of the time when I was in Adam Waffen, it was a pit of self-hatred of all of us, like just talking about how much we hated ourselves and how we weren't going to amount to anything. And it was a lot of like, oh, we should kill people, we should kill each other, oh, we should kill ourselves. And like that was the community. It was just depraved negativity the entire time. I hope that answered the question.
Well, I was thinking, where did it come from at home?
Oh, further back from my dad.
Yeah.
Okay.
I could see and appreciate it, like I said.
I gotcha.
Guys, first of all, you both speak well. This is not easy.
Yeah, no, that's all good.
This subject has got to be top, really difficult things to do. But where do you think, like, I mean, I've had theories of my dad and where some of his own anger and craziness came from, but did you go back and think, why are my parents like this?
Just to
Yeah.
reiterate the question, I apologize.
Gotcha.
And just to let everybody know, I should have said this at the top. We are recording, but if you don't give your name, you're not on camera. It'll just be your voice, right? So you won't be identified. The question was the second part of the very good question, which was, right, tracing the hate back to your father or your mother, and where did that come from? Because they didn't join at all, right?
Right.
Where did that come from?
So my mom, I'm not entirely sure, because funnily enough, my mom's side of the family came from East Germany. So I don't necessarily know where my mom got her views from. Never really got to talk to her about it. She wasn't really a huge part of my life. She still isn't. She was kind of absent even when she was there for a brief period. But with my dad, his father was really bad, like really, really terrible. And my dad, when his parents got divorced, he didn't stay with his mom because his mom decided that she would take both my aunts and that my dad could fend for himself in a way, which made him feel alone. And so he had no other choice to move in with his father, my grandfather. And my grandfather was just, I mean, he was really, really, really belittling to my dad all the time. Oh, damn, this is crazy, actually. He said that he would never amount to anything and that he was wasting up resources in the house, constantly eating. Even when he bought his own jug of milk one time, his dad drank it all and then yelled at my dad for drinking it. And it's like, come on, man. And I even remember, like, actually when my grandfather was on his deathbed, he was screaming for cookies. And we were like, you are diabetic. And he was like, well, I want some ice cream then. And we were like, no, you're diabetic. You will die on the bed right now if we give that to you. And he was like, well, F you, I want the ice cream, I want it now. He's freaking out, like raging. And I never seen him act like that. And my dad was like, you know what? That, he was like, right? I think it was vanilla actually. But yeah, my dad was like, you just showed your true colors in front of my kid. Like, this is how you acted all the time. Congrats. And I was like, wow, I didn't know my grandfather was like that. But like seeing him act like that and then hearing the stories of what my dad told, it makes sense, it tracks. But I don't know, my dad, he used to say all the time, hey, I don't want to end up treating you the same way that my dad treated me. Kind of does. So I hope, did I answer that time?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
I see the hands. I just wanted to give, yeah, why don't we do that?
Yeah, the pandemic generally increased loneliness around the country. And do you think that contributed to the rise in white nationalism, that people who felt isolated during those 2 years or so when we were largely locked down, that they were more driven to white nationalist groups?
So the question was whether or not the COVID pandemic and the lockdowns in particular led to a lot of loneliness across the country, and whether or not that was a catalyst for growth of the white nationalist movement, if it helped with recruiting, if it moved people into these movements.
If I have any thoughts on that, it's that it's a combination. It's a combination of the original Trump administration plus that. There were a lot of people that were lonely and were angry, very angry over life-saving measures. I have a public health degree. I specialize in infection control. I'm currently in a master's program for social work, but that's related more with this stuff. But the public health stuff, you know, I started doing that partially because of, you know, I used to be an anti-vaxxer, and then of course the pandemic happened and all of that. But you know, I myself, you know, understand why all the measures happen, but most people don't. So they're really angry about it. And then you have Trump, you know, the first time around, basically normalizing, you know, hate, and as well as fomenting this anger towards it. So yeah, I in my opinion, the pandemic has definitely exacerbated the situation and kind of led to, you know, everything that's going on right now. Yeah.
Out of hands. Yes.
Thank you. My question is, how many women are in the white nationalist groups, and do you think that they joined for other reasons, or what other reasons they joined for?
So the question was about the prevalence of women in white nationalist groups and why might they have joined?
Now we both come from different kind of brands of white nationalism. Mine was more of the original, you know, I was associating with National Socialists, you know, of kind of the NSM variety, National Socialist Movement variety, where you would see them doing the marches down down the street and stuff like that, as well as KKK members and right-wing libertarians, and basically the whole original before the internet got really popular type of what people think of classically when they think of white nationalists. And back in the day, there were quite a few women in the movement, but women in the movement tended to not last very long. Some stick around, but others tend to be a part of it largely because of partners that they have or family and stuff like that, and then they'll often leave eventually. I would say that women tend to leave on their own more than white nationalist men do. These days, it's a little bit more blurred because the state of the white nationalist movement is a little bit more, it's less fringe now. So women are more likely to be involved now than they were even back in the day. So that's kind of where it was when I first started. Now he's going to tell you a little different how accelerationist terrorist groups dealt with it.
So, full disclosure, in those type of groups, we do, or not saying that I'm in the group anymore, but we did view women as property, or we would use them as like advertising per se. So there was a group that was connected with Atomov and Temple of Blood. They would use their girlfriends for pictures, lewd pictures of them just whipped and cut and pretty horrific shit. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to curse, but pretty horrific stuff. And though the content would be gruesome, it would work for advertising purposes for that group to the worst people in society, basically. It wasn't particularly Atomwaffen per se, but Temple of Blood does fall into Atomwaffen. So, I mean, like in Atomwaffen division ourselves, we never allowed women in. So that being said, like they didn't know I was trans until later. And they were actually very, very, very angry when they found out the trans person got in and nobody clocked that. So, I mean, like the most a woman could do for the group, like they could never get patched in, they could never have a uniform, they could never say that they're in a group, nothing like that, but they could print out posters, and that's it. And it's not great. But was that a good answer? Okay.
Thank you.
I will say that you see there were a number at that point, well, actually I'm going back even longer, 2015, 16, 17, 18, there were a lot of women who rose to prominence using social media, and they were typically quite attractive and well-spoken. Some of them have had their lives ruined from it, some of them have made careers and a lot of money from it. But it was fringe, and a lot of them wrestled with, first, if you believe in traditional hierarchies, right, the gender and racial hierarchies are always entwined. It is very hard to find like a progressively feminist white nationalist. You're not going to find that. These hierarchies matter. And so blurring of gender boundaries, right, from their perspective, not from mine, but from their perspective, right, that's a violation, right? Jewish people, one of the reasons we tend to be so problematic is because you don't know how to categorize us, similar to trans folk, right? So there were these women, they had to deal with a lot of harassment. The women who were coming out saying, I want to be a trad wife, well then why are you on the internet? But there were very influential women. I think, yeah, I'm going to throw it back to you because I have a very specific question. There was the New York Times got just ridiculed for an article that made me think a lot of what Scott lived with, and Scott helped lead. They sent a reporter out to go meet some white nationalists, and the report back was something like, oh my God, it was amazing. Like they had a picnic and they had families and they loved their children and they played games and a kid fell and they took care of his boo-boo. And you know, the shock that they weren't like always bleeding from the mouth. And that reminds me a lot of how you described your time in the movement. I'd love to hear more about the place of women in your group.
Before I do that, you actually made me think of something. It's also to answer your question. I've had 2 clients out of 10 that were women, and one of them I can't really talk about was a Temple of Blood member that of the group that he was talking about. But the other one was actually a YouTuber. She went by Affiliation until she was kicked off of YouTube for a video where she was doing a happy birthday to Hitler. So they definitely exist, and even sometimes need a little bit of help getting out and changing. And to answer your question, since we tended to try to recruit families more often than anything, it tended to be women that were involved because of their partners. Now, some of them were just as bad on their own. April Gady, who I should point out, she is still fairly problematic, but she's evolving a little bit. I'm still in contact with her. She, sends me job stuff all the time, as well as just keeping up with me. She knows I came out as LGBTQ. That's one of the workplaces where she's evolved. She doesn't care. Aside from April Gady, we also had several other families, the most normal, just looking families ever. They would go out and do the same things that we would do. So if we went out shooting as a group, we would go out. We went out sometimes with Jeremy and his wife, and we would go shooting in the national forest, and we would take the kids with us. So we would go out there. I would, I had a Ruger 22 rifle that I would put out so that all the kids would be able to shoot it. It was something that they could plink with. 22 is not really a very difficult weapon for a kid to wield. So we would let them shoot. We would monitor them to make sure they were okay. But we went out there as a family. So the guys, the kids, the women. Once we got done, we'd just go walking into the mountains and to find various waterfalls and stuff like that. It was always very kind of wholesome and normal, despite the politics of everybody. So I don't know if that answers answering the question, but,
Thank you. In the back.
Hi, I just wanted to say thank you so much. This is eye-opening and fascinating, but I have so many questions, but I'll start with this. Tyler, I think you said you got recruited on Instagram.
Yeah.
So I'm a mom of teens, I work at Ridgewood High School, and I feel like I spend a lot of time thinking about what my kids and my students are consuming, and like how, do they just send you a DM and are like, hey, you wanna be a white nationalist? Or like, how do they bring you in? Is it slow, is it fast? Like when they tell you to go to the Temple of Blood, are you like, yes, this sounds great?
Oh, so Temple of Blood's actually, there's a weird way to get into it, but with Adam Offen specifically, I'm glad you asked that. So the way I got recruited is because I was very open on my social media. I joke a lot and I say my digital footprint probably looked so bad, but the FBI wiped it, so it doesn't exist anymore, luckily. But it was so out there that Adam Offen was like, hey, that's our guy. There's certain keywords that you can put into most sites to look for that kind of atmosphere, I would say.
So it's typically like the people poking around on their own versus the people coming straight at them.
Right, so I was kind of, I don't know if Instagram works the same this way anymore. This was about 6 years ago now, because I was, what, 19? Yeah, so at that time, when Instagram was like that, like you put in siege, and then you could do that search, and it stood for A Siege by James Mason. Terrible book, by the way. So you would put in siege, or you put in 1488, which is, one of their languages, or even just like HH, like those basic tags. And you start clicking on people's things, and you can see just a little bit of Nazi pictures, just a little bit of Nazi pictures, and you keep liking that. And then you can follow people, and then you'll get recommended more people to follow, more pictures to like, and that's kind of how they built the community with that algorithm. But I don't know if the algorithm's the same today. That's just how it was at that time. But I mean, the way they were able to find me is because I used some of those tags a few times.
What was their like opener to you?
Huh?
What was their opener to you when they reached out to you?
Oh, the guy reached out and he said, hey, you're in charge of your own group. You seem to know what you're doing. Our guy in charge is an idiot and we need him gone. That was point blank to the point. And I was like, okay. I said, what group are you talking about, basically? And he was like, Adam Offen. And I was like, there's no way, dude. There's no way you're reaching out to me through Instagram. Like, my mind was baffled. And he was like, no, I'm serious. And from there, I mean, you guys know what Telegram is, right? Yeah. So there was a similar app that Adam Offen used to Telegram. I think they did use Telegram for a little bit, but then they stopped for a while. But we used Wire, and it was an encrypted messaging app, and they had me download Wire and then connect with that person directly, and I spoke with them for about 2 weeks. And then after the 2 weeks, they felt comfortable enough to let me into the main group chat, which was for Florida Cell specifically. And then from being in there for a couple of months, I was put into another group chat with the leader that I kind of put in charge at the time, and of the Florida Cell, my bad. And then the group chat of what we call the nucleus, which is all the Adam Offen guys that were kind of in control of everything while the leader was in prison. And most of them lived in Seattle, Washington. So we would stay in contact with the main group from that side of group chat. But there's like a bunch of different pathways that you take to get there. And I would say, like, just be very cautious of what your kids are saying, what they're watching, what they're doing. Don't be overly cautious. cautious, but don't be like my dad, where it's like, oh yeah, that behavior is totally normal, you know. But yeah, I mean, I don't even think they do flip card anymore, do they? Nope. Okay, I have no idea. I would watch the military camo in particular. If they're starting to wear military camo, it's probably a little bit of a dead giveaway right there. It's not very subversive. But yeah, I mean, like I said, it's been a while since I've been on, so I don't know the algorithm anymore. Don't know if it's even there like that. I'm sure it probably could be that way some places. Like I did have, before the Instagram thing happened, I had somebody try to recruit me off of Tumblr. And I don't know if anybody knows Tumblr, but Tumblr is a pretty progressive platform. And to find that there was like, whoa, that's strange. There was that one girl last talk,
Yep.
she brought up Pinterest now. They're starting to recruit people from Pinterest. One of the last places you'd expect. So I know there's a big problem still though with like Facebook rabbit holes of far-right groups. Might be worth monitoring, but I mean, really, I don't think anybody around my age is using Facebook too much anymore. That's the only pointers I can give right now. I'm sorry, I did my best.
That's great.
Okay.
I'd like to add to that a little bit. There's a wonderful scholar, his name is Dr. Craig Johnson, and he just wrote a book, How to Talk to Your Son About Fascism, I think, or about white nationalism. I think it's fascism. He also has a podcast. I don't remember the name of it. It may be In Bed with the Right, but that might be somebody else's podcast. But if you look for Craig Johnson's book, How to Talk to Your Son About Fascism or White Nationalism, and Craig, I don't know you. If you see this video, I apologize for getting the details wrong. But he really speaks quite saliently about this. And beyond the groups, right, they talk about what jokes are they making? Are they suddenly making inappropriate jokes? Are they suddenly, like you said, dressing slightly differently? Are their friends different? Are they spending more time online? And he takes the next step, like how to approach them so as not to make the matter worse, so as not to close off your children. And he said son because it's usually sons, but Pinterest is not usually men. It's not usually boys. One of the places where white nationalism is spreading really quickly, and this is kind of more among my demographic, well, women, I'm a man, is in the health sphere, in yoga videos, in alternative health, because alternative health gets you into conspiracy theories. It's a really good way. The doctors are telling you the wrong things, they're lying to you. And if one thing is a lie, then the next thing can be a lie. And it's a way to destabilize your hold on the truth and to bring you down a rabbit hole. And it can be done very quickly. The algorithms help. And, we tend to have this image, particularly those of us who came up in the 90s, of white supremacists or skinheads being stupid because we saw them wearing boots and laces and they listened to a particular type of music and they looked a way that we were able to say, oh, those are sad folks. They don't look like that anymore. They don't announce themselves like, some do. But this is, I think, important stuff to look at. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, go ahead. I don't want to forget, but you're good.
To kind of bounce off of what Dr. Levin's talked about, even back when I was involved, the health food thing was also a key recruitment tool. Not to mention anti-vaxxer. I was an anti-vaxxer myself. But even April Gady, her father, who's named Bill Gady, he runs a ranch in the foothills near Fresno, California. And he actually created his own raw honey to sell, and of course market as being healthy and this and that. And it was swastika brand honey. His cattle brand was a swastika. And so we pushed doing all the health health stuff in the PLD. It was something we did do. I know I don't look the healthiest, but we still did it. So yeah, it absolutely, it has been going around for a while.
Just remember, to add on to your question.
I'm gonna be a problem tonight.
It's all good. So, nowadays, most of the recruiting goes through gaming chats. Discord, Xbox Live, PlayStation. What?
Yeah.
PlayStation now, right? I don't know. I don't use PlayStation.
But that's funny because the guys didn't want to play games with you.
Yeah, I know, right?
Roblox.
Roblox, yes. Roblox is, believe it or not, Roblox. Minecraft, actually, because that's what they tried getting me to do too. They were like, I'm just going Minecraft and recruit some kids. I'm like, that's kind of weird. But yeah, gaming, man, it's kind of hard because like, I know you were like, I don't want my kids slip into this, but at the same time, you don't want to be like, I'm a helicopter parent, right? So I would honestly just, I guess the soft way of going about it is just pay attention to what they're saying, like really intently.
Yeah.
Talk to your kids.
Yeah,
I do.
communication.
I never talk to my kids.
There you go.
Can I ask another question?
Wait, can I, before you do, I just
Yeah.
wanted to add one thing that it has, I believe, slipped my mind. Oh, the gaming. Right, what we should know about the gaming is that one of the key figures that produced the alt-right that begins around 2013, 2014. First, it starts, I don't know if you know about Gamergate, but it was a serial harassment case with a woman journalist writing about games, and then women making games that appealed to women, or anybody, but were specifically designed for women. And there was a huge pushback. This is supposed to be a man's space, and if you dug a little deeper, a white space. The men's right movement takes new shape after this, right? This is where we start seeing the incel movement, who are men who believe that they're involuntarily celibate, that the internet and they blame online dating, but in general, 80% of the women sleep with 20% of the men, and the rest of us have been ruined, bereft by feminism, and what are we going to do about it? And some of them end up being terrorists. Steve Bannon recognized this in 2012 from Breitbart, and he recognized this on these platforms. He had been working in gaming, and he said, here's an army. And he mobilized them, and that were the people marching in 2017. Those are the people, and the marches did not start in 2017. These were the people, one of the factions at least, that created the aura around Trump, right? When, after Unite the Right, when Trump came out and said there were very fine people on both sides, Andrew Anglin, who was running the Daily Stormer, another very prominent Nazi website, tweeted out to everyone, he loves us all, right? At that point, none of them believed that Trump was actually a white nationalist. He was an icebreaker, to use Greg, not Craig Johnson's term, right? He was gonna open up the field. I think that's changed as well. So just to add on to the gaming thing, that it's not only young people on games recruiting each other. Was a multi-millionaire directing this, right? He wasn't alone, but there is more than you can deal with, right? So the best thing to do is keep informed and talk to other parents and support your kids, right? We heard a story, right?
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Who?
Yeah, back there.
Next, yeah.
So, this is fascinating to me, but certainly one of the things I worry about is that white nationalism is not even being normalized, but it's infiltrating our country in a big way. You see people in Congress who you say, I think that's one of them. So what can who do about it? And I truly do mean who. I mean, I'd like to know what I can do about it. I've got one congressperson and 2 senators. I don't vote for them for a while. I mean, what can anybody do to push back on this, or to, and maybe pushing back is not the right answer, to change this, or to normalize a different way? What can we do?
Oh, right. I was like, they hear
I think
you.
we're both like, thank you for getting
That was a wonderful thank you, Scott. And y'all can call me Jacob. It's just, the question was, right, the person who asked the question said that she perceives that white nationalism, as opposed to how a lot of us perceived it earlier as a fringe problem, as radicals off to the side, has now become mainstreamed, and in her perception, infiltrated to become part of our government. That there are certainly, and have been certainly, people in the Senate, and certainly in the House of Representatives, right, who we might say, oh, that's a white nationalist. Some of the policies today are white nationalist policies. I'm not even going to use the perceived language. And so the question is, what can we do about it? What can who do about it? Was it really nicely phrased?
So I will say, I definitely think that there's a white nationalist problem in the White House. I'm not even going to be gentle about that. I mean, even Musk with his salute and what, had somebody else at CPAC do a salute to, right?
Bam.
Yep, there you go, yep, ban.
XF.
Yeah, so, I mean, the big thing is, like, I guess establish a community, you know, organize your community, and I hate to be that guy, but below a fire area as much as possible. I don't even know how you it's too close?
Too close.
Yeah, sorry. I don't know how you would go about that, because I mean, like, funding, it's kind of hard. But like, I guess what the country would really need to start doing is get to know your neighbors, for sure. Get to know your neighbors, know who they are. Talking too close again? My bad. And then see what connections you can establish from there. And then just, I don't know, worst case scenario, our government a little bit. I mean, it's not looking good. I'm not even going to be gentle about it. I had a researcher ask me 3 years ago, what do you think would happen if Trump got back in office? And I listed off a few things off my hands. And I was like, I don't know, it's really not going to end well if he gets another round. And the things I listed off started happening quite rapidly within, how many months are we on now? 3? Yeah, okay, yeah. It's not looking good. So, I mean, just organize your community. That is all you can do, is just be tight-knit with each other and then plan accordingly. Is my legal advice. You want to go ahead, Scott?
I can definitely say no, resist, and do not comply.
Oh yeah, never comply.
Other than that, you pretty much said everything I would say.
And this is important now because we connect digitally now. We didn't record the event in the morning, partially for the students' protection, but partially because increasingly I'm trying to put people in a room together. I'm so glad that you're all here and that we're not doing this over Zoom, that we see each other. Where our bodies are going to bump, I'm going to try not to, but we're going to bump into each other as we walk out. That's extremely important. And it's extremely important particularly. And I think you're absolutely right on. And the one thing I'll add is capitalism, liberalism, they try to convince us that we're individuals, which we are, but that the individual is the building block of society, that I need to shoulder it myself. That leads to a hero ideal, which is a cornerstone of fascism, right? The fundamental building block of society is society. Remember that and build the society that you want. There's no way that I can do anything individually. I'm not that remarkable to change the course of American history right now. But my street, my neighbors, for me, my students, and the school I work for, we can do a lot of good work. Find out what you do well and do it. I don't do a lot of protesting anymore. I'm 47 and I don't want to get arrested and I have a dog, right? I did protesting when I was younger. Find out what works. In the back.
Yeah, I'm curious to know, while you are in the group, do you believe the things? Do you believe the anti-vax? Do you believe the conspiracy theories? Or somewhere underneath you, do you know that you're just following the group speak? Or are you genuinely, a believer? While you're in the group.
Great question. And this is something I had to come to terms with when studying this. When you're in these groups with beliefs that are abhorrent to so many of us, do you really believe them? Do you believe the anti-vax? Do you believe the anti-black racism, the anti-Semitism? Or is it something that you do to be part of a community?
In my case, I was not a true believer in everything. There were things that I believed, there were things that I thought was stupid. To be fair, I never really took a lot of it seriously. I don't really take much seriously even now. I take opposing my former associates pretty seriously, but other than that, everything's a joke to me. But when I was in the movement, I was anti-vax, but I had already had most of my vaccinations at that point anyway. I did get flu shots because I may have been anti-vax, but I'm not stupid. I was basically, I preferred not forcing people into having vaccinations was my kind of thing. When it came to beliefs on race and stuff, that was something that I didn't believe at first, and then I started kind of pushing into it. Now, I was fairly moderate to begin with throughout the whole point. My whole thing was recruitment. So I held a lot of progressive views, and I pushed a lot of progressive stuff. Meanwhile, I was also recruiting people to basically join a movement where they might potentially become far worse than I was. And so it's one of those things that it's difficult to talk about without seeming like I'm downplaying anything. But, I can tell you now, there's at least one person in the room that knew me from the beginning. Daryl Lamont Jenkins there, who was the founder of One People's Project, who was filming this for us. I met him early on, and we had some debates, and we had some, fairly nice chats, and so I was able to kind of play the edges, I guess is the best way to do it. And so, me personally, I try to keep an open mind and not just follow the dogma of those around me. There were people in the PLE that were far more dogmatic than I was, and then there were those that were actually even less than I was. So it varies. And it varied in my cases. It depended on what the subject was. At least in my case, I hope that answered the question.
So, unlike Scott, I drank that fruit punch. I fell into it pretty hard crashing. I started off pretty tame. But I fell for anything you put in front of me. If you said that aliens just landed on the planet yesterday, I'd be like, yes, they did. Yes, they did. And I will go find them. Like, it was ridiculous. There were so many conspiracy theories that I fell for. It's funny, it's not funny, but it's kind of funny that a lot of the stuff that we believed overlapped with QAnon over time. And actually, over time, we looked at them and we said, oh, they're dumb enough to believe anything. They'll fall for whatever we tell them. And we can get them to come to our side and stop being conservatives, quote unquote. So I mean, then again, my little sphere was younger and more susceptible to that. I feel, at least.
I'd say sort of. I mean, Facebook right now is a huge breeding ground for a lot of that stuff. So, and that's not necessarily younger people. So, in some ways, yes. In some ways, everybody's kind of susceptible to it.
Yeah, and I see there are a lot of questions. I do want to move to, I want to make sure within the time frame that we've allotted that we get to some questions that I think are really important. Yeah, okay, so I'll cut that. The question that I have then is, what got you out? Right? Because you've heard how deep they were in. Scott was a leader in the movement. Tyler was a leader in a movement, right? These are not, oh, I dabbled and then I left. How do you, so I'm curious about, as much as I'm curious about that, remember that demand question, what does it do for you? What got you out? What stopped working? What changed your mind? And then if we can put these together, and we can go back and forth, but what is the process of getting out like?
My exit was basically, it kind of started around 2012, 2013 at Anders Breivik. Anders Breivik was a neo-Nazi in Norway who ended up murdering 71 children. Some of them he shot, some were bombs that exploded, big whole mess. I knew him on Facebook. I knew him as Andrew Berwick. I wasn't friends with him or anything. He had probably followed me from Stormfront. And at some point I had kind of kicked him off my list. Either he said something stupid, because I tried to keep my Facebook a little bit apolitical, or either that or he left on his own because maybe I said something that he didn't like. But that was kind of one of the first times where I thought to myself, are we the baddies? I was a Stormfront moderator at the time, and I would actually go into threads, and there would be people supporting Anders Breivik, and I would be raging. And I got my first ban on the site as a moderator because the way the administration of Stormfront basically told me was, because I was going in there and basically chewing out all of these people that were supporting it, they were working behind the scenes to try to delete everything, all the support. And I was basically putting a spotlight on every one of those posts. And so Jack Boot, who was the editor-in-chief of the site, he basically gave me a timeout and said, "Please stop. You're doing what we're trying not to have done and trying to hide this." And I was like, we should be instead of just deleting these posts, we should be banning the people who are supporting the murder of these children. And that was basically my first time just be like, what am I doing here? And from there, there was mass murder after mass murder. There was murder suicide after murder suicide. J.T. Reddy, Yankee Jim Leshkovich, Yankee Jim Leshkovich, before that. There were just Wade Michael Page. There were all these murders happening, and it got to the point where I just got sick of the negativity and the violence and the support of the negativity and violence. In the PLE, I would use Anders Breivik as a question when I would talk to potential people coming into the PLE. I'd be like, "So what's your opinion on Anders Breivik?" And they would answer, we think he was great. He did a service. Oh, yeah, why? Killing white children? I don't know how that's a service. And then they would reply, "Oh, these were commies." And I was like, "They're commie children. Even assuming they're commies, they grow up." and so I would then potentially ask them, if somebody in the PLE, if a child of a PLE member decided to go commie in order to get back at mom and dad, what would you do? And they would basically reply things like, well, if the parents didn't do anything, I would have to do something. I'd go, well, what would you do? Would you murder the kid? Would you murder the parents? I mean, at what point does this become kind of stupid? And usually that would be an instant rejection. I'd say, leave town. We don't want anything to do with you. But that was a common occurrence. Doing recruiting for Pioneer Little York Housewell, even though it's a very normal, otherwise kind of group in certain ways, it gets to you. And my last straw came in 2013-ish, 2014-ish, when April recruited a guy named David Delenio to come to the PLE. And I was supposed to vet him, but I told her no. I didn't want to do it anymore. I didn't like these people. I told her I was starting to despise white nationalists. And so he just stayed there. Next thing I heard was he was arrested for threatening to shoot school kids. Not just local school kids, just at a random playground, but one of the communication director of the Brady campaign, Jonathan Hudson, was threatened that his school kids would be next. And so that was my last straw. I basically told everybody, I'm done. There's none of this anymore. You are all psychotic. I don't want anything to do with you. And I started raging on Stormfront, just cussing up a storm, just flaming everybody. John himself saw it and decided, hey, he goes to his wife, he's like, I need to meet Scott. And she's like, he has guns, right? It's probably not safe. And John's like, well, he seems pretty upset. I don't think he's going to shoot me. And so he contacted me, and I myself thought that he was probably going to think about the fact that I was a gun owner. And so I told him, I was like, you know what? I'm going to be going to do laundry on this particular day. Just come to the laundromat, meet me. I'll be wearing just ratty old clothes that are stinky and dirty. It kind of put me in a submissive kind of position, not much of a threat, and we talked, and we're friends to this day, So that was kind of where my exit kind of came from. After that, I ended up enrolling into college. That was when I started going for my public health degree, and in the midst of that, Andrew England of the Daily Stormer that Dr. Lobenz mentioned earlier started attacking a family in Whitefish, the Gersh family, Tanya Gersh. And what ended up happening was he put up a page about Tanya Gersh's 12-year-old son. Well, what got me into the movement was going after kids. This was what was going to make me an activist against my former associates. And so I tried to get the page taken down. Instead of that, the host sent my personal information to Andrew England, who called me crying, just bawling. Christopher Cantwell is a Nazi who's called the crying Nazi, but Andrew England's kind of close. And he basically said, I'm going to get my millions and billions of followers after you, you're going to pay. And I was like, I was a white nationalist, I earned this, so just do whatever you're going to do. You need to be stopped. And he did dox me, got about 12 angry, weird messages, that's about it. But what it did do is, the Montana Human Rights Network saw what I was doing, reached out to me and said, hey, we've got this influx of money from people trying to defend the Gersh family in the city of Whitefish. Can you do you have any ideas of who could come talk? And I said, I just met Christian Picciolini. Maybe I can get him to come. And so they ended up bringing him to Montana. I met Christian for the first time in person in Helena at his talk there, but he also talked at various other places. In fact, Richard Spencer was at his Whitefish talk. from there, I basically hooked up a Christian and kind of learned the ropes of doing exit counseling and stuff like that, helped out Free Radicals Project, and decided I was going to do the same thing. So I founded Hands of Air with another queer former, and I already mentioned that earlier, so that was basically my exit.
Okay, so my exit actually came after meeting my ex-wife initially and starting to date her. She had no problem with me being trans. Big problem being Nazi though, understandably so. Understandably so. And she used to come over to my house quite often and tell me like, hey, that makes me uncomfortable. Can you take that off the wall? Or, hey, that thing on your dresser makes me uncomfortable. Can you put that away? And over time, I just slowly started putting things away. And it got to a point where she said to me, hey, it's either you keep doing this, you get arrested, and I leave you, or you just stop what you're doing and I stay with you. And I was like, okay. Well, 2 weeks before my arrest, I tell Adam often, yeah, by the way, I'm trans and I really don't want to be a part of this, and good luck. See ya. Don't really care what you're gonna do to me. And I ended up getting arrested, and funny enough, she said, don't ever put me in handcuffs, and I got her put in handcuffs. She was at my house when my house got raided. And after a month and a half in the system, I came home and I was just like, wow, well, now where do I go from here? And I wasn't like totally mentally out until, I want to say 2022, because at the time, my ex-wife didn't want me to necessarily be political at all anymore, even though I was heading to the other direction. She was like, no, I want you to leave that in the past. Like, I just don't want politics to be a part of our lives. And I said, well, I'm sorry, but politics is your life. Like, you live politics every day. You can't just avoid that. And she was still so against it, and I was like, well, whatever. I want to do the right thing now, so I'm going to start looking at other things. And it got to a point where I was like, I am so afraid of falling back into this. Like, I am like probably 5 steps away from falling back into this again, because at the time I had no support system. First, my dad was mad at me getting arrested, and it wasn't even so much so that he was mad I got arrested for what I got arrested for. It was, well, you got arrested, and now when people search my name to buy a car, it's your name pops up, and that screws my sales. And whoops, sorry, Dad, if you see that, but that's the truth. So it was rough. Like my mom, at the time, I was living with her, and we've only lived together for like a year, and that's, I don't know, maybe 9 years of my life that I've had with her. But like the beginning 8 years, I really didn't even know her too well. Where was I going with this? Lost my train of thought. Oh, right, thank you. So basically, like, my mom was mad at me, didn't really want anything to do with me either at that point, and all I had was my ex-wife. And at that point, I was removed from access to a computer for 5 years, so I'm actually really bad with a computer now, and I'm still trying to relearn that right now, and it's been a little bit of a hassle, and Scott's actually had to try to help me with a few things. It's kind of funny. But I reached out to Christian Picciolini because I remember in the past, like, a lot of the dudes in Adam often or similar groups, we were like, screw this guy, Christian Picciolini, who does he think he is? Like, how dare he just come out of the woodworks and say, oh, I left this, and we're like, this guy's a traitor. This guy's just a traitor. And I was like, sitting there remembering us making fun of him. I'm like, but what if he's right? What if I reach out to him? What if he can help me? And so I did reach out to him a few times. Eventually got in contact with him, and he said, hey, I'm not really familiar with the LGBT area, and I'm a little booked up right now, but I have a buddy, Scott, that lives in Florida, and it's probably close to you. You can talk to him. And then he put us in contact, and client Scott, so it's been working out pretty well. I mean, Scott kind of really does treat his clients like his friends, so it helps.
Family.
Family. Friends at first, though. We did play video games. Hey, this guy likes video games. There you go. But yeah, it's crazy because I want to say it was a slow burn getting into it, but it really was a slow burn out of it, and I mean, it takes quite a few years, and we're only in 2025, so it's only realistically been 3 years for me, but I mean, it was 3 years of me calling Scott 6 times a day, like, what's happening with this, and I'm scared about this, what if I'm thinking this way? How do I stop thinking that way? And he's like, just don't think that way. Really it. And lo and behold, it really is it. But, yeah, I mean, it's been quite a bit of a journey. I think, you know, I never thought I'd be at the point I'm at where I get to have a normal, for the most part, decent life, but I'm kind of glad that I got there. So, yeah.
We've done the presentation, we've had these discussions, and so now I'm really interested, if I can speak for my friends, what your questions are. Go over there.
So you've talked a bit about your families and the fact that you have complicated histories with your families. What about your schools, where you went to school, your elementary school, your high school? Were there moments, did they fail you? Were there connections there that could have pulled you out of where you wound up?
Just briefly, the question is, you know, where was there a failure in education, in our education system in this country that led to this?
In my case, I was raised fairly normally. My parents were liberals, and politically, before I got involved in white nationalism, I was kind of just a typical libertarian type. As for school, getting me to that point, they didn't really fail me any. School was fine, other than the fact that I ended up dropping out. And that was mostly due to my own screw-ups. So I can't really blame anything on schools myself. Let him do it.
Could they have done something?
I don't think so, because when I got involved, I was 26 years old. So it was bad choices at that age that did it. There was really before that, there was no even inkling that it was going to happen.
So I actually come from Egg Harbor Township, so by Atlantic City. So I actually had to hide that throughout my high school for the majority of the time. But as far as like the education-wise, growing up a lot, my dad would say, hey, don't believe everything they teach you at school. It's all a load of shit, basically. I just cursed again. Sorry. But that's what he would say. He's like, it's not true. Not all of it's true. So he had me just questioning everything I was learning, which like opens you up to rabbit holes, of course. I don't think it's a failure on the education system. I think it's a failure on the home environment more so for me. Which, that being said, like, I'm very against homeschooling. Very, very against it. Like, I don't think there is any need for homeschooling. Now, that being said, I wasn't homeschooled, but if my dad could afford it, he definitely would have. He definitely would have in a heartbeat. In fact, he said the only reason I was in public school is because he couldn't afford to homeschool me. Or else he probably would have. Did I answer? Okay.
I can probably also add, just because we weren't necessarily affected by that doesn't mean there aren't people that can. So that's why I actually am a proponent of, diversity programs in schools and, teaching kids about people who are different than they are. Using the proper pronouns and, all of that 9 yards, all the things that are currently not being allowed. So, it starts in the schools in a lot of these cases, but that the schools tend to not be what happens in school doesn't always end up being how we ended up where we were.
And something was striking, right? Taylor, you said that your father was telling you to question what you hear. That's what my job is.
Yeah.
Is to teach students to question what they hear, right? So school is full of people. It's the people. It's again back to the community. Now, one of the things we do at the center, and I'm not saying this to promote us, I'm saying this to explain, we do a lot of trainings for teachers historically in Holocaust and genocide education. We're continuing to do that. But we've added, Colleen Tambusio was here, she's our pedagogy programs administrator, and she's expanded our capacity tremendously because I don't know how to teach children. Right? It's not my training, I don't have kids, I'm not around kids. I lectured to 7th graders, and it was like talking to cats. I had no idea what was going through their minds. Now I've lost my train of thought. It's been a day. The challenge, I think, with schools is not the schools themselves, it's the community in which the schools are embedded. Wealthy communities in this country can provide excellent programs for their students. Poor communities cannot. You can't learn when you're hungry. You can't process things or do your homework when your home life is a mess, when there's no space, supplies, or safety. And so education is important. Though the myth of the left-wing professor who radicalizes students is not borne out by statistics. We need infrastructure to do the type of training and teaching, and we need students to come to the classrooms feeling supported, right? If school is a place where you can get the kind of support that you don't get at home, that can be diversionary. I know Scott talks a lot about shifting the focus of Hands of Air in part towards prevention. This, I think, goes a long way to prevention. So, after you.
I was just curious when you get a client, what is your game plan? Like, how, is it a lot of talking, or what do you do? Maybe if you see somebody, we could get ideas.
So the question was, and this is great, I can't believe I didn't even ask this or think of it in the first meetings today. What do? You get a new client, someone calls and says, Scott, I've been in for this long and I gotta get out. What do? How do you help them?
Well, everything I've done so far has been basically untrained. I'm getting training in social work now, but up until this point, I've been winging it. I am very chaotic in how I tend to do things. But the way I usually start is somebody will reach out to me, usually on social media. Sometimes they'll be directed to me by anti-fascists. Chris, who's another former Adam Waffen who actually lives with us in Montana, was directed to me specifically by an anti-fascist activist. So that happens on occasion. Sometimes it's people that I've had Twitter spats with that, I call them mean names, and then eventually they're like coming to me going, you seem to have a good head on your shoulders. It's debatable, but it is what it is. From there, I will usually set up some sort of Zoom meeting. before I brought on Dr. Danny Carroll, who is a PhD in social work and is my mentor in social work and is my practicum supervisor. Before I brought him on, I basically would do it with Vicky, who had founded the organization with me. We would go in, have a Zoom meeting with them, and then just go from there. And then usually the actual counseling is very informal. So we'll decide what kind of help they need, and if it's actual just ongoing counseling, often we'll just use video games. We'll get in a co-op video game, start playing, and do our chats while we're playing it. Me and this one here would play like Baldur's Gate 3 and other games. So it's always been very formal. Hands of Air, though, is changing. Dr. Danny Carroll's an actual social worker. I suppose I am kind of now too. And so we're starting to formalize the process a little bit more. We're going to be actual paperwork, and because paperwork when it comes to white nationalists is always hard because they don't want to have things that can get out and stuff. But we're going to start requiring some actual stuff like that. But we're also going to be leaning towards prevention. So getting people out. I've had 10 clients in 8 years, which it's a decent amount, but that's not a lot. That's a drop in the bucket. And so it's much faster to stop it where it starts rather than wait until they decide to leave. I don't reach out to my clients. I don't go out looking for clients. They have to come to me because if you try to force them out or you try to get them out, they'll dig in and never even bother trying. And so I will continue doing this kind of thing. Hands of Air, as it stands right now, is going to become a program within the future. We're going to change the name. We still haven't really figured out what we're going to change it to. And so you'll have the main program, and then you'll have, if somebody does reach out to me, I can do that on the side. And so right now we're in a flux. It's been informal, but we're going to be getting more formal as we go on.
Can I ask Tyler what you thought was the most helpful, what he did for you?
Honestly, just letting me talk to him. Call him at random hours. Sometimes I would call him at 2 a.m. freaking out about things that I just wasn't sure about myself with. And he'd be like, hey man, it's all good. I was kind of sleeping though, but it's all good. I'll hear you out. And yeah, I mean, definitely I know it sounds stupid, but the video games and just sitting there talking for hours. I used to drive my ex-wife nuts. She was like, put that game down. I was like, no, I don't. No, I don't. But yeah, him and I would just talk and talk and talk. And, still in the process of processing what happened to me in the last 3-4 years beforehand. A lot of the things I've seen, have done to me. It was a lot. And my ex-wife wouldn't let me talk about it with her. She was like, well, you hurt me too when you got arrested. And I was like, you have no idea what I went through though, before my arrest and then when I got arrested. Because, I mean, being in the prison system, being trans, not fun. That was probably the worst experience anybody could have in their lives. But yeah, I mean, it's just communication is always key, I think, when it comes down to anything in life. And that's kind of it. That's really what helped me, just being a person to talk to.
Can I ask, I see your question, but one of the questions that I have is, honestly, we've had a lot of discussions today. I don't know if I've said this here, so I apologize if I'm repeating myself. One of the thoughts that I had when I was watching this movement grow was, how do you get out? And I meant particularly for public people. And they talk to each other about things, right? When you leave, go quietly, don't say anything. You're going to hurt the movement. You're only going to hurt yourself. And there are real consequences. Right? One of the ways that activists sort of disrupted the alt-right, or that version of the alt-right, was by doxing people, giving out their public information, saying, this guy's a Nazi, right? and that affects your job prospects. And I was watching, if I said this already, let me know, but I was watching, I was in St. Louis, right, when Mike Brown was shot, and Derek Chauvin, the cop who killed him, was kind of disappeared. Did I say this?
You said Derek.
Oh,
Chauvin.
shoot. What was his
You're
name?
thinking of,
Shoot.
oh, what the heck was his name?
Was it Jay or something?
No, I can't remember the police.
Either can I. So his name doesn't matter.
Chauvin's his name, Floyd.
From Floyd, yeah.
Yeah.
This was someone else, I'm forgetting his name, but they caught up to him. Finally, the media came to his door, and his wife eventually let him out to the door. And they said, "Where have you been?" And he said, "Well, I found people. I'm hanging out in places where they accept me." And that meant he was hanging out with Nazis. It meant he was hanging out with white nationalists for the most part. Richard Spencer, who's my age, right, and who was one of the main leaders of this movement, he's not out, but what could he do? Who's going to hire him for anything? You don't want to be associated with him. And what terrifies me is that means he needs to double down. That means he needs to stay in it. So I'm curious about how you help people with that, and what you've gone through in leaving the movement beyond the internal struggle, which I can hardly imagine, but also the practical struggle, which I also never had to deal with.
In my case, I actually didn't really struggle much. I faced no consequences when I left. I would actually have to kind of chew out anti-fascists for just adding me cold turkey to like Nazi hunter chats. I mean, literally out a year and they're already adding me to the chats without asking everybody else in there if it's okay. And I'll be like, guys, that's probably not the best idea. But I also never really faced any consequences when it came to jobs. I actually have anti-extremism work on my resume, and they ask me what it's about, and I tell them, and they're like, that's fascinating. It's literally all I get. So, unfortunately, this is one where I'm a bad example. But I'm also kind of a unique example on that. Most of my issues since leaving have been personal, me doing stupid things still occasionally, just not the same type of stupid things. But for most people that leave, it is a struggle. I have clients that don't talk about it with anybody ever because, of fear of white nationalists going after them and harming them or their families, or losing their jobs. I've got some clients that are in some pretty jobs that are so secure that if their employers knew that what they used to be, they would be fired instantly. And they're not dangerous themselves. I know them, especially now, long enough that I know they're fully out, and they will even occasionally do things like talk to researchers just anonymously and stuff like that. So they're not completely not doing anything at all. But sometimes you got to keep their livelihoods safe, and so the fear of that usually is, if I leave, and what are my prospects going to be like? I kind of lucked out, and then I went back to school, and then this type of thing. So now that's my story. Ty's is a lot.
It's very rough, actually. So during my pre-trial, before I was put on probation, nobody wanted to hire me because I wasn't even on probation yet. And to stay on pre-trial, you have to have a job. Otherwise, they will throw you back in prison for being unemployed. So I fought tooth and nail to get whatever job I could get at the lowest point, just to stay out of prison. And I did that for a while. And then eventually I got put on probation, but now I have a felony charge that can never get expunged. So it made it very, very, very hard to find a decent job again. I actually went out of my way to reach out to my employer that, essentially fired me when I got arrested. And I begged for my job back for 10 months. I was like, please, like that. such a good job. I showed up on time all the time. I put in so much overtime. Like, please just let me have my job back. You can even take me for a lower rate. I will do it if it means I don't have to keep doing whatever the hell I've been doing for the last 2 years. And eventually, like, begging for my job back did work. And after what was the last round of COVID that was like really bad? Was it Delta? Don't even remember.
Like 2021 Delta, probably.
Was it?
Probably.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And it was probably 2022, right? I think. I don't remember. Very bad with memory. But after all that blew by, they laid us off after COVID. So, lost my job again. And I had to keep trying to find another job for months. Nobody would hire me again. I spent like 4 months throughout the year unemployed, and I actually bought a house at that point and couldn't pay my mortgage for 4 months. So my ex-wife was not happy and had to pick up a lot of the slack because there's nothing I could do. And, you know, eventually I found a decent job. And then, going through a divorce. So had to leave Florida, leave my job behind, and I'm back into the same position where I am struggling to find a job again. I maybe held a job for, 2 months? So I've been in Montana? Yeah. Like, I would hold a job for 2 months, and then they'll do a little bit of digging and be like, yeah, actually, we noticed with your performance that it's this, and then, boop, gone. And recently, I lasted the shortest amount of time I've ever lasted in a job, 3 weeks. Because they said after 3 weeks that they couldn't afford to pay to train me, and that we didn't have enough production, so they had to let me go. And I said, well, why would you hire me in the first place, if that were the case? And that's just kind of where we're at with that. But on, like, the other aspect of, like, getting out, because I think you touched upon that too, with, okay, I don't have names, but I got you with that story. There was a point where I was like, well, I cut ties with Adam often, and it's already out there that I'm trans, but now nobody wants to hire me, so I'm not sure what I do. Like, do I stay in that far-right sphere so I'm not homeless in the future, even though they really don't want me? Or do I just try to go back to a normal life and see if that works and hope for the best? And maybe then I can pay for my sins, essentially. Which it's like, I don't know, there's always a feeling in your chest where like you have to repay this debt to society, and you'll never repay it, but you're gonna damn well try. You might not get there, but you can at least get a little bit close. Then at least you did something, and that's kind of how it feels for me.
That's what you're doing right now, Tyler.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
I mean, like I said, it's a little, it weighs on me a lot. I mean, I can never take back what I did. A lot of the things I did, not even just with my arrest, but I mean, like I said, I'm just gonna try. Because the other alternative did not seem like a good idea. But yeah, I hope that answers it. Also, you had a question for a while.
Me?
Yeah.
Well, you sort of just touched on it. I was interested in how you actually quit. Like, is there like a meeting and you're like, I'm out? And then after you quit the group, like, and we touched on this a little bit too, but like physical violence or like your life, is that like something you're worried about? Like, could they come after you or?
So good point. With the coming after part. So when I left, I pretty much just called up the head guy and said, "Hey, I'm trans. I'm out. What are you gonna do about it?" And I left it at that, and he was speechless. And I was still on good terms with the leader of the Florida cell that I kind of put in charge. And he was like, "Oh my God, dude, Croc is losing it. He is screaming at us. He's saying, 'I can't believe you let a girl in,'" like freaking out. And he's like, "Well, I'm confused because, well, he sounds like a guy and he looks like a guy, but he's a girl. I don't get it." Blah, blah, blah. And it's like, yeah, you don't get it. You're an idiot. So, I mean, they were trying to like mess with me the few days before I got arrested on social media, like trying to make a big deal out of it. And I was like, "Whatever, dude, I don't care. You're not gonna do anything." And I mean, recently they've been trying to get a little handsy with me on Twitter, and I was like, "Yeah, you guys aren't gonna do anything." And I mean, because I shouldn't say that they won't do anything. There's always a potential for that there. But for me personally, I'm not worried. I mean, like I said the other talk, I would like to live till I'm 40. I would. I mean, at least 40. But if I don't, I'm kind of okay with that because I'm kind of at peace with my life. I've done enough. I'm only 25. That sounds terrible. But I've done enough that I want to do. Like, I'm pretty content. Okay. My only fear, how am I gonna die? That's.
I think we all worry about that.
Yeah. But I mean, I'm not particularly afraid. Like, if they do something, it's like, okay, well, oh well, and I mean, they'll get arrested. And, yeah, they'll get arrested, and then they're gonna look like psychos. So pretty much do the job for me and make a fool of yourself. Then go ahead, There was another question too.
There were two, one and two, and that'll be our final question. Why don't we start in the back here, stand up for a
Yeah,
while?
sure. If you could just give us some idea, what sort of communities do the people in the white nationalist population come from? Do you get people from well-educated, affluent communities like Ridgewood here, or is it many more from very poor towns?
I'll take it first. In the kind of older white nationalism that I was in, you had a lot of people from various backgrounds. You had, you had wealthy people, usually elderly, that would often be called whales. You would seek out them for money. I used to be on the board of a white nationalist charity called FAWN, Financial Assistance for White Nationalists. Charities in white nationalism, not usually a very common thing. And the reason why is because they would rather buy that new shiny gun than help you buy car seats for babies or diapers or anything like that. And so we usually sought out the whales. And, at least in our case, we had a couple of people that would constantly help us out just because they wanted to. And that was always nice. But there was also those that would just give money to Don Black of Stormfront for keeping his radio show going or trying to keep the website up. But on the other hand, you also had the poor crowd, but even they would rather buy guns than food for the kids or anything like that. So it was always it depended on location where they were. If they were from the deep south, they would be one way. If they were from, New England, they might be a little bit more affluent. If they were from up in Montana, or Wyoming, they would be, kind of a mix, I guess would be the best way to put it. California, there was a lot of affluence, but there was also a lot of skinhead groups down there that came from working class families. So it varied, especially back in the day in the kind of overall groups that I was a part of. Yours.
Yeah, so I think, I'm pretty sure we're all aware of this, but as time goes by, we are all getting more poor, right? So, for me, my experience with being around guys my age, it was more so like a lot of them were poor and angry and ready to cast violence on the world because they were poor and angry and lonely. So actually, you know, the poorness doesn't really, it does play a part, but not the hugest part, but it definitely does play a key factor. And I think that goes back to like education too, poor education is a poor area. But every once in a while you would have like one guy in the group that has like a little bit of money and will go out and buy the uniforms or go out and buy the guns or go buy drugs so you can sell over here. So that's how it went for me. But yeah, we never had whales. Like when he mentioned whales to me the first time, I was like, what is a whale? Like, are they big guys? That's what I'm thinking. But
Self-description?
stop. But yeah, that's my experience.
I mean, I will say, if you look at who joined the Nazi Party, right, the original one in Germany, right, it was a party that drew from a lot of people, but particularly the petty bourgeoisie who are falling, right, who's in a moment of crisis, they didn't have the money that they used to, the civil servants, right? I'm a civil servant, I work for the state of New Jersey, my salary will not change even if inflation goes up. I have a decent standard of living right now, professors aren't wealthy, but I pay my mortgage and we eat and go out occasionally. If there's a crisis, my life falls into crisis, but my job doesn't change, right? Those people who have expectations of society that they're suddenly not meeting, right? It's not necessarily poor people, it's often people who have either tasted or have expectations, and part of this ties back to whiteness.
The library will be closing at 9 p.m. Please bring all materials to the circulation desk now to have them charged out. We will reopen again tomorrow at 9 a.m. Thank you and have a good night.
Thank you for coming to a shut-in. We're going to end this on time. It is, and it ties into whiteness. It's this sense of, we talk about white privilege, but it's a sense of, if you don't think of it in terms of privilege, because the people who fall into this trap don't, it's an expectation of how America should work. And suddenly America fails you. And you need an explanation, but the explanation is so complicated, right? We need a number of people from my university, college, to come and explain what's happening right now. An historian, a sociologist, economist. Most people don't have access to that. So who do you blame? You could blame the Jews, you could blame immigrants, you could blame Muslims, and it provides you with an answer and an outlet, and like you were talking before about what can we do, it answers, what can I do? I'm taking a stand. And you might start and think it's baloney, but it's something, and you can get drawn in. So I think the poverty thing is there, but it's really relative to expectations. Right? And I think that's important. And as we get poorer as a country, and as our social safety net is being dismantled, and as our communities are being driven apart from one another, as it becomes hard to meet in one another, we all become more susceptible. And I think the biggest danger that we have is assuming that, well, because we're in Ridgewood, we'll be fine. My kids won't do it. Because we're in New Jersey, we'll be fine. The key thing that you learn in studying genocide is that the scary thing really isn't that any one of us can be a victim. That I can get my head around. It's that any one of us can become a perpetrator. It is a human faculty for violence, and it comes at times of anxiety. We are wonderful creatures when things are going well. We can tolerate anybody. We can have our culture fair, and then I'll taste every food, and then this colorful dance happens. When anxiety sets in, that's when we demand really strict borders. What is a Jew? What is a black person? How does gender work? Right? So rather than poverty, think about a declining society, well, I don't want to use a decline narrative, a society that is no longer meeting the expectations and forcing people to look elsewhere. So our final question, thank you.
Okay. Thank you all so much for coming. I only found out about this a few days ago, and it's just perfect timing. So thank you to each of you. it's just so courageous, and it's just so important that we all make time to talk about this. I did want to help break the stigma just even more for you, and just share that it's so stirring for me because I'm a survivor of mental illness. I am a survivor of my own suicide attempts. Gratefully, I'm now a professional. I did kind of look to see if I knew anyone, but I hope to share about it. So I've been there with violence, and existentially, like, I have felt hopeless, and I actually got into self-harm studying the medieval saints, including the Catholic saints who starved to death. This brought me to Mahatma Gandhi. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. made a suicide attempt. I haven't found it in the book yet, but I was informed Mahatma Gandhi made a suicide attempt with his best friend when he was young too. So anyway, like that's shocking, and actually most people, and I went to Stanford, most people like didn't even know that about those leaders, nonviolent leaders. So I just wanted to help break the stigma about that existentially. And my question, I mentioned to Scott that I did want to ask your advice. Unfortunately, my brother, who's also queer, thank you so much for coming out. I'm also part of the trans and intersex community and non-binary. My brother, though, who did come out queer before his accident, he's living in a state hospital. He was arrested, but he agreed to go through the court process. So he declared himself insane, so he wasn't incarcerated. But he's in a long-term program, and he got involved with a Christian hate group in Missouri, the Fellowship of the Martyrs, under DiPeppe. So it's very Christian-based. It's biblical, and I read the Bible. And I mean, the thing is, in our family, like with Judaism, or even like my brother's like blue-eyed, my father's white, they're more Ashkenaz, my mother's Catholic. I was out in California, which is kind of also how I picked up addiction and self-harm. So now I was kind of opened to the Sephardic community among the Black and Black nationalism out in California, Chicano nationalism movement. So I've been there with that. I don't have blue eyes, so I just wanted to ask you last. I'm really scared. I like shared as much as I could with my brother just about my mental illness and my hatred, just basic, just the hatred that I hated myself, and I just couldn't handle a number of things in the world. I'm also very scared, just didn't want to wake up another day. It's all, depression, shame. But for the first time, I was considering I'm afraid that he hates me, that maybe he doesn't want to see me anymore. Like, maybe would it help him, like the Buddha just left his kingdom and disappeared. Like, I was thinking of moving to California and just giving him space. So I wanted to ask you about that in terms of confronting somebody, especially when like you can be so different.
Thank you for sharing, by the way. It means a lot to hear that. It's very difficult, and you mentioned it was kind of cultish. Those type of situations are just those are definitely way beyond my kind of expertise on things. But I do know a lot of kind of cult experts and stuff like that. They could probably, when we talk, I could probably get you through to them. But as for whether you should leave or not, I would say no. That abandonment kind of, he could possibly feel abandonment, and that could, worsen, the situation for him. So I would say, I definitely would say, you know, don't just give him space, you know, be in his life, you know, set boundaries, you know, don't let him, basically say everything he wants to say, or especially if it makes you feel bad. So make sure you set boundaries, but, you know, occasionally check on him, make sure, you know, he's doing okay. If he starts talking about, you know, the types of things that he, you know, normally talk about, you know, say, I don't really want to talk about that. Let's talk about this subject instead. Just try to change the subject. Try to keep it the relationship more, you know. You try to control the situation on what discussions happen. That's probably my best suggestion on it. Tyler, I don't have siblings though, so that's the other kind of issue when it comes to that. Tyler has siblings, so I will let Tyler do more. But we will talk. You've got my information now, so we'll talk.
Thanks so much.
So, thank you again for coming. I will say, now, unfortunately, like, my brother over time had too much of my garbage on his plate, but for a while after he moved away from Florida and I was on my own, and I was falling really hard into Adam often, and he was like, oh wait, oh crap, like, you actually fell into that. That's not good. So he would still talk to me and love me from a distance. But for the most part, like, he would just check in and be like, hey man, how's work going? How's school? How's this? Like, are you doing okay? And it kind of, like, as soon as I would start talking politics, he'd be like, you know I don't agree with you. I'm not gonna talk about that, yeah. And if I kept pushing too hard for it, he'd be like, okay, I'm done talking to you then for the rest of the day. Maybe I'll check in tomorrow, maybe I'll check in 2 weeks from now, but you just earned your way of not hearing from me for at least a little bit, because you already know where I stand. But he would still, you know, check in, make sure I'm doing okay. Basically, like, instead of pouring water into the bucket, he's dropping water one at a time. Still just loving me from a distance, but not loving me enough to where he's destroying himself, per se. I hope that helps. I know that's rough, rough to hear. And I mean, that being said, like, my brother and I, we don't talk often, but we definitely talk way more often than we do now that I'm in a better place. But it took years, right? So it could also take years for you too, but probably get there. So, you got it.
You've created such an intelligent, safe space here tonight. You should all feel just really good about this. And thank you all for sharing. That's incredibly moving. And you're all helping. All of you were helping all of us with whatever we're struggling with. So thank you, Jacob, and thank you, Scott and Tyler. This is a remarkable night, and we will be hearing from you and keeping in touch for sure.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you all.
Within the next 5 minutes.
Yes, please keep in touch, and yeah, I'll try to help you out a little bit better.